Sushi today has many forms. There are rolls, nigiri, hand rolls, sashimi, and many other varieties. In fact, I go to a restaurant all the time, and it has sushi sandwiches. How cool is that? So what type of sushi do you think was the first type? Like what was the first type of sushi? What do you think?
Nigiri.
Sashimi.
Oh, so many good answers. So, just like many other ancient things from Japan, because we don't know exactly where it originated, it is covered in folklore and legend. So Tori Avey at PBS wrote an article called The History Kitchen, and the most common tale told about how it originated is a Japanese woman was fearing for her life, and so she hid these rice pots, which are her sole source of food. She hid these rice pots underneath an osprey nest. And nobody really knows how long it was before she came back to find the pots of rice, but when she did, the osprey above it had dropped some of its food, mostly containing like fresh fish, into the pot, and it made like a fishy rice mixture. So she said it was delicious, and not only was it delicious, but the cooked rice actually fermented the fish. And as my audience is well aware of, I'm a bit of a science nerd, so I'm about to drop some knowledge on you, okay? When rice begins to ferment, lactic acid bacilli are produced, and the acid, along with the salt, causes a reaction that slows the bacterial growth on fish, causing the fish to pickle. In actuality, sushi probably didn't originate that way. It probably originated in the 9th century Japan, when Buddhism was coming to Japan, and a common characteristic of Buddhism is that they stray away from meat, so fish became ever more popular because everybody could then eat fish. The mixture of fermented rice and fish was the first type of sushi, and it's called nair sushi, or aged sushi. And it really originally took a long time to make, like over 6 months for just one batch of this stuff. And so typically because it took so long, it was reserved for the upper class, people who had money to pay for such time-consuming foods. In the 1600s, sushi makers found out how to speed up the fermentation process, make it only take 2 hours, but that was still a little bit time-consuming and not super cost-effective. So the recipe of rice topped or mixed with fermented fish didn't really change at all until 1820, when Hanaya Yohei actually set up a food stand in the middle of Ibo, which was the capital of Japan at that time. And it was right next to a lake, and so what he did, he served sushi, but not in the typical fermented rice way. He just made sushi, put salt in it, put rice vinegar in it, and because it was right next to a lake, caught a fish, put the fresh fish right on top, and sold it. And it was Japan's first fast food, and also was the invention of nigiri. Because Edo was one of the world's largest cities in Japan, the word traveled really, really quickly about this new stuff and about this new sushi, and eventually it became the staple of how sushi was made because it was faster, easier, fresher than the old way. In 1970s, the sushi industry took another boom because refrigeration was invented. And so now sushi chefs don't have to worry about all the long preparation, fermentation, all that stuff. So refrigeration promoted the expansion of innovation as well as the expansion of sushi into America from Japan. Now that World War II, the anti-Japanese sentiments were over, the immigrants moved from Japan to Tokyo, and now they started a little Tokyo in California. Discover Nikkei is a website that studies Japanese immigrants, and according to the writer Edward Moreno, the story of how sushi got to America, it all starts with a man named Mr. Kanai. He was a Japanese entrepreneur, and he paired with a man named Harry Goldberg, and they planned to start a restaurant in Little Tokyo. They described their mission statement as, "Success comes when an entrepreneur detects a public need, jumps to serve it, and does that in the best way possible." During their journey to find entrepreneurship gold, Mr. Kanai and Mr. Goldberg went to Japan, and Mr. Goldberg was introduced to sushi. He immediately fell in love with it. The rest of the trip they were there, all he did was eat sushi. And he racked up a bill of 12,000 yen. And so I don't exactly know what 12,000 yen is, but I found my answer at majorexchangerates.com, and which says in 1964, which is around the time that this happened, that $1 was equal to 17.2 yen. And so this equals about $705 that Mr. Goldberg spent on that week, or however long it was, in sushi alone. When Mr. Goldberg and Mr. Kanai got back in the US from Japan, Mr. Goldberg was so sure that he had found the solution to the problem and that he was going to bring, or they were going to bring sushi to the US. Mr. Kanai was not about it. He didn't think that Americans would eat raw fish, and he got his restaurant partner, Mr. Nakajima, and Mr. Nakajima shared the exact same sentiment, that he didn't think that Americans would eat fish. But then Mr. Goldberg told them that, there are Jewish people and Italian people and Spaniards and Southern European countries, and all their descendants are all piled in this giant melting pot that is America, and they eat, gefilte fish and caviar and roe and squid, and so all these things are already in America, so why not just put some sushi in there too? Finally, Mr. Nakajima agreed to open up the restaurant, and so he started with a small sushi bar, and his primary audience was Japanese businessmen, because they wanted a little taste of home. They don't have the sushi like they did back in Japan, and so this all worked out really well, and then it turned even better, because then they started bringing their clients in, and all of a sudden the clients just freaked out and loved it. They started telling all of their other American friends about this unfamiliar cuisine, and that it was just amazing. The roll that actually captured their taste buds and hearts was the California roll. And they used avocado instead of tuna in this roll, because tuna was way more expensive and way more inconvenient to get. But avocado still had that velvety, palatable feel that tuna has. In an essay called Global Sushi, Eating and Identity, Paige A. Edwards of Western Michigan University calls the California roll the gateway drug to the hard stuff, which I couldn't agree with more, because it just makes you want to eat more sushi. Restaurant Kabufuki is the restaurant that they were working on, and the chef, his name is Saito, became the first sushi chef in America. And the restaurant did so well that within 4 years, he and his wife, who also worked at the restaurant, got to go back to Japan, start their own sushi bar, and live their dream they'd always wanted. As the restaurant continued to grow in popularity, other little bars began to pop up around Little Tokyo and started expanding a little bit. And then according to Cindy Fang's article, The Tale of Sushi, History and Regulations, sushi not only started to populate Little Tokyo, but went out in the suburbs. So now not only was it available to businessmen and people like that, but it was also available to families and children and women and all those great important people. I can imagine the initial mission statement echoing in the minds of Mr. Kanai and Mr. Goldberg still, that they had detected a public need, they had jumped to service it, and they had done what they wanted, they had done what they could as best they can. So now, all of you sushi lovers know where sushi originated, how it evolved, and how it came to America. Thank you.